Thanks. All right, so hope all of you are enjoying the rest of the day. We are one talk away from today's summit before we finish everything. And I'd like to invite our next two speakers up here. So our last talk of the day is going to be about Filecoin Plus, and Deep and Galen will talk about what Filecoin Plus is, and as they're on the Filecoin Plus team, and just what it means to verify, incentivize, and onboard useful data. So we have both of them here now, and I'll ask them to turn on their video and get us started. Welcome.
Thanks, Karthik. Really excited to be here.
Hello, everybody. All right. Let's make sure. Deep, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Sweet. Looks like we're going to go ahead and jump in. Thanks for that intro. As you said, we're talking about Filecoin Plus, verifying, incentivizing, and onboarding useful data onto the Filecoin network. I'm Galen McAndrew. I'm with the Filecoin Foundation and the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. With me co-presenting is Deep Kapur. He's with Protocol Labs. We kind of dual attack this project and work on it from both the social engineering and the technical infrastructure side. And it is all open source and community driven processes. So we're excited to tell you guys about it and how you can get involved. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. But if anything comes up or we're going too fast or you have a burning, yearning question you want to ask, feel free to just pause us and jump in. All right. So to that end, our agenda with the time that we have, we're going to go over just what is Fil Plus. You may see it written this way: big F, little I, little L plus. That's the Filecoin Plus program. Talk about how it works and its core mechanisms and concepts. Go over some of the kind of incentive mechanisms, how this fits into that marketplace ecosystem, and then talk to you about what you need to do to get DataCap, and then how you could get involved in the program in a couple of different ways. So why don't we launch into it? Basically, a short answer is that Filecoin Plus adds a layer of social trust to the Filecoin network to incentivize useful storage. We're going to unpack what some of these things mean as concepts. The core mechanism is different actors, different entities that could be an individual or it could be an organization, play a role in essentially the allocation and spending of DataCap. So this graphic kind of highlights in a complicated way all of those interactions. You don't need to memorize this to understand how the system works. But effectively, through a community governance model, people can apply to be a notary. Those messages will go to some root key holders to approve it and sign messages on the chain. So they have this audit trail. And then notaries have the ability to allocate that DataCap to clients. And then clients are going to seal deals with storage providers. And those deals are going to be verified through the signature of DataCap. So it is a novel resource that is, like I said, granted to notaries, then down to clients, and then clients use it in addition to Fil to make deals. It is not the same as some other currencies or tokens because it is a single use credit. So it is not a currency that is going to flow or that you could go purchase. It is consumed as it's used, and it can't be transferred. So it's more like saying, I have gotten kind of a coupon or a stamp that I'm going to then be able to use in these kinds of transactions. And the way that it works downstream to the storage providers is they are going to get extra rewards by serving deals with DataCap. So we'll jump into how that functions. So Deep.
Yeah, let's jump into a little bit more. So looking at Filecoin as a network today, it's the supply side of the market is primarily served by storage providers that make storage available to the network effectively. So they have excess storage available, or they've built out data centers, which they're willing to rent out space over a period of time on effectively. And so clients in the market are effectively looking ways in which they are able to utilize these services spread out geographically with different availability concepts, standards, compliance, etc., to identify storage providers that they would like to work with, in addition or as an alternative to cloud storage options that may exist for those particular clients. And so the way the network incentivizes the existence of supply, and especially during like this initial growth phase of the Filecoin network, was effectively looking at how much relative storage as a storage provider you are serving to the network, especially with regards to what everybody else is bringing to the table. So effectively, Filecoin does a lottery or something close to one where it looks at the amount of power you have, and power is measured as both a combination of the quantity of the amount of data you're making or space you're making available, but also the quality of what you are sealing on the network. And based on how much power you are making available to the network, you are more or less likely to win block rewards. So every epoch in Filecoin, which is 30 seconds, several storage providers have the opportunity to win block rewards, and the likelihood of you winning block rewards is directly influenced by your relative power on the network. So now that you have like the basic sort of economics of the supply side down, let's talk about the incentives of the supply side and why Filecoin Plus leverages, or what it actually leverages to make a storage experience for a client more friction-free effectively. So today, as a storage provider, you have the option to just make your space available, or you're bringing on space to the network because you already know that you're going to seal a client's data in it. So that's the difference between just sealing a sector versus sealing a deal in a sector. And the benefits of serving a deal are that you actually get additional revenue. So not only is the network compensating you for making supply available to the rest of the market, but also you're earning money from the actual deal from a client, because that client is going to pay you as you're offering them a service of storage. So for the period of time that you're giving them storage as a service, they're paying you, per epoch effectively in Filecoin. And additionally, if a lot of people come to retrieve the data that's being stored, so say it's like a public good, like open data set, so like COVID data or environmental change data, etc., access to that data itself can also be like paid for, like the way you would expect from a CDN. Every time you go and actually fetch that data, the provider that's actually giving you that data is taking opportunity costs on bandwidth, dedicating hardware resources to ensure that your data gets transferred, and then just in general making sure that they stay available and online for you to access the data as well. And so that also yields additional revenue. But this tends to come with liability as well, right? Because as a storage provider, you own the hardware on which somebody else's data is now being stored. So not only do you have to deal with getting that data onto your hardware, but also the implications of storing that data over a period of time. And so while there's concepts already in the Filecoin deal making network around like content policy in terms of service and conditions in which a deal can actually happen, it still is additional work. Like it's very simple for a storage provider to start out by just saying, hey, I have got a new hard disk of X terabytes that I'm just going to upload to the network and make available for supply down the line. Rather than having to negotiate with the client upfront, identify what they'd like to store on behalf of that client and like turn it into a deal as it comes to network. And what we see in the market is that price is effectively set as a combination of needing to offset these additional costs that come from making a deal, which includes like the potential liabilities. And then obviously the fact that it's an open market, which tends to drive pricing down, at least in the nature of the market today. Or you start to look at Filecoin Plus as an alternative where if clients come to a storage provider after going through the Filecoin Plus like program where they've received this resource DataCap that Galen just talked about, DataCap effectively becomes like an alternate form of payment for a deal. So it could be used in addition to Filecoin or in place of Filecoin. But it's a completely independent value that's being set where a client can say, yes, I got DataCap and I'm going to use DataCap on this deal. And the way a miner interprets that is basically that like the likelihood of how storing that data for them will increase their presence on the chain is boosted by 10, basically. So there's a 10x multiplier on the storage that they're actually offering to the client that's coming and compensating them effectively in DataCap. And so miners become significantly more incentivized to choose to provide storage to specific clients that are coming with DataCap. So not only does it offset some of the liabilities by making it much more lucrative for a storage provider, but also these clients are going through a vetting process to even receive that data cap in the first place, which we'll be talking about soon after. So it also reduces like any of the risks that a storage provider may actually be taking on by creating a deal or having a long-term partnership even with a specific client in the network. And so as a result, we end up seeing that clients that are willing to go through the process with Filecoin Plus to receive data cap are more easily able to identify storage providers that they can work with, and also tend to receive storage at extremely low prices. So the main takeaway for you here, if you want to switch to the next slide, is actually that like storage providers are willing to effectively provide free storage for verified clients that go through the Filecoin Plus system, because the incentives that the Filecoin Plus program creates for them outweigh the short-term cost to both onboard a client and their data to the network and then seal it and maintain it over a period of time. So it's become a very interesting and useful lever for clients that are willing to go through the process to ensure that they are receiving the best possible deal when coming to store their data on Filecoin. And it also helps miners who are able to offset their risks and increase their rewards over a period of time. So what does it actually mean to get DataCap as a client? So DataCap, as Galen said, it's a resource that basically gets allocated to a client and is single use only. So you need to go get it from somebody who can actually give it to you. And if you recall in that diagram, there's this role of a notary. And so notaries are elected through like a community election process and granted a certain amount of DataCap that they can dispense over a period of time to clients. And so you as a client or a developer in the Filecoin network, either you already have an address to which you'd like to go and make deals from, and so you'd like to go get DataCap to that address, or you're acting on behalf of like an additional user down the line. Like say you're building a service on the network or something that interacts with ETH or different blockchains, and you want to ensure that you are able to get the cheapest possible deal for you or for your users on the network. Depending on whether or not you're using your address or somebody else's address, you're going to go and try and get DataCap for that. And so we interpret, or we like to think of this path as like 3 stages. The first of which is getting a very small amount of DataCap with a very minimal investment through what is called like an auto notary or an automated notary. One such notary that a lot of people use exists at verify.glyph.io. What that particular program does is it basically checks to see that you have a valid GitHub account that has existed for more than 6 months. And assuming you don't go to it more frequently than once every 30 days, I believe, it will give you 32 gigabytes of DataCap in the next possible like message that will land on chain. So that typically takes about 30 seconds. And so that's extremely useful because that's the size of like the average sector that a storage provider actually offers and on the network, which means that on average, like the deals that you're going to make are always going to be less than or equal to 32 gigabytes at a time, like individually structured within the network. And so when you are coming through that process, then this enables you to have like at least one, but oftentimes many, since especially if you're storing smaller files that are in the megabytes or I don't even know what the KIB the term is. Using binary is not as intuitive, but yeah, if your files are smaller, obviously you're able to make even more deals. But this ensures that you get at least one, and it's extremely useful for testing and developing around Filecoin Plus and ensuring that you understand the end-to-end flow and are able to utilize DataCap as a client. Next, there's this process of going directly to an actual like human notary, so not an automated notary, where a human is doing like subjective vetting, due diligence, and analysis to choose to give you some of their grant effectively as a client because they believe that you are worthy of this. So their measure of worthiness, we'll dig into a little bit more in the next slide, but tends to be sort of a combination of like trust that they can establish with you as a client and like understand like who you are, what you bring to the table, but also the data that you're onboarding and why it's useful and valuable and enables Filecoin to be a more productive network and achieve its mission to be like the data store for humanity. So individual notaries exist like all over the world. We currently have like 23 active notaries distributed in most regions. Recently, in the last notary election cycle, we also had a notary elected from Oceania. So we're adding more continents as we go along. But notaries will typically grant like between 0 and 50 terabytes of DataCap to an individual client. So this is a really good way to go if you're working on like building like an actual production use case where like just like the test, like GB magnitude is not enough, but you actually want to onboard either like one or multiple data sets, or you're working to build a solution where at least for your first round for production, like having 50 TB bytes of data onboard onto the network does cover your needs. Then there's this third sort of tier, which is if you're bringing on a really large data set. And so we've seen this be really popular with a lot of like archival use cases. So like projects that are working on like multi-petabyte scale like data onboarding onto the network have come through this. And so this path, instead of like applying to an individual notary, you're applying to groups of notaries effectively. And so those groups of notaries become collectively liable as fiduciaries of the network to ensure that you as a client coming with this scale and demand to the network are worthy of receiving DataCap at this magnitude. And so the application process for that looks a little bit different. And I'll talk to those in a second, but the intent is that it's a fully open and transparent process where you do some requisite amount of KYC, address questions that are coming in from the community or from those groups of notaries, and receive like a massive amount of DataCap associated with your address that gets allocated to you over time. And so that process is a little different in that for the first one, you're going to a website and signing in with GitHub, giving an address and getting DataCap. For the second one, you go to the Filecoin Plus registry, and we can share links about this, but you effectively, it's plus.fil.org, you sign into that and you just identify a notary that typically is either in your region or in your relevant field of work. And you're able to identify somebody that you can work with, can understand your use case, understand your business needs, and can give you the DataCap that you require. And then there's this third tier, which is effectively not through such a easy or handheld process of a website, but rather through like a GitHub issue, so that it is open and transparent and openly discussed. And we also have community governance calls that we'll be talking about at the end of our presentation, because we'd love to see you there. But one of the topics of conversation at those calls is these large data set notary applications that are open at the moment, and ensuring that clients that are interested in being unblocked to store petabyte scale data on the network do receive the support and sort of the friction-free experience to the extent that we can on the network. And so this is more the collective responsibility, large scale archival use cases on Filecoin and unblocking them from moving forward.
Awesome.
Can you talk a little bit about this? Yeah.
Yeah. So Deep sort of touched on some of this. We'll just speak, briefly about like what it looks like to get verified. Again, after you do sort of that first auto verification process as kind of a sample test run, were you to go, directly to a notary, what they're going to do, that we have some community standards that we sort of all share and aligned on, but each notary can have their own individual process. So there is not necessarily one hard and fast kind of application or set of questions that everyone would need to answer to work with that middle group of going directly to a notary. But in general, that kind of KYC, know your client due diligence is essentially just going to be the notary asking a little bit more about you, the client, to say, are you an individual or an organization? Can you share your website or your social media handles so that we, can vet a little bit that you exist? Who are you? And then tell us a little bit about your use case and the data type. And so the data type could be, someone who's storing primarily documentation, and the use case is it's a technical archival data set of sort of written documentation, or it might be a data type that is video, archival video files from some journalistic endeavor that they collected. And then there's conversations around whether or not this data is public or private. And then the questions become, what is your anticipated sort of storage behavior? And there's some kind of guidelines that we encourage people to use around like how much redundancy do we encourage people to bake into their system, and then what kind of geographic distribution. So our goal and intent through these programs is to kind of both help clients make good archival data decisions using some industry best practices, but to also have diversified network strength, and so helping with geographic and storage provider diversity. And then there's questions around like deal and data transparency, and so we want to have these deals existing transparently on the network, and sort of getting the clients to share and understand like that current expectation. And so that's the path in that middle sector where you may be getting in the terabyte range of DataCap working directly with a notary in your region. And then if you wanted to learn more about the Filecoin Plus program, or what you could do to get involved, the first great place is just following this link to these docs. These are on the Filecoin docs, and it's a set of steps that will walk you through everything from standing up a Lotus Lite node and creating your first address linked to that Lotus Lite node, and then going through the process of using that auto notary to verify and get your first little sample set of 32 gigabytes of DataCap to then experiment and play with. You could work directly with a notary if you want to onboard larger data sets, maybe, again, as something that you wanted to test, or a service that you were building out or developing. And you can find more about that in our kind of GitHub repo right now, as well as in that plus.phil.org link that we sent in the chat. You can find, both of these links. We also would love to invite you all to get involved in our community governance. You can join a call. Those are happening every other week, and we, discuss some of the topics, directions that the program is going. How can we, where are the friction points? How do we unblock people? Because the overall goal of Filecoin Plus is to help sort of grease the wheels on deal sealing. Like, how do we get more data onto the network in a way that is working for all of those different entities? And so in those governance calls, we want to try and understand, where some of those friction points are, and then see what solutions we could implement. We also invite you all to apply and become notaries and become those stewards of the network, directly working with other clients. And so you may be interested, in working with a larger array of clients that are creating that data. And so you could help connect them to that DataCap to get those verified deals. We also always need additional tooling. We have lots of interesting ideas and processes for things. The Filecoin Foundation has grants available at a range of sizes for people to help build tools that are going to grow and improve the overall Filecoin network. Some examples are things like reporting and investigation tools on various like deal making and behavior practices, being able to investigate where DataCap is in that different funnel, and maybe, again, helping automate some of that process of how we would unblock by finding the stickiest point. We also want to improve the notary due diligence process. What are some tools that we can help build in conjunction with our notaries and have a robust tool set that helps our notaries do that KYC process in kind of a fair and transparent and equitable way, again, in an international scale. So to all of that, you could work directly with the Filecoin Foundation, contact us. We're happy to help talk to you about our different dev grant opportunities. And we are standing up kind of different bounty boards where we'll share out some of these primed ideas, seed ideas, but we'd just love to hear from the community about what ideas they may have. We super appreciate your time and listening to us about Filecoin Plus and verifying and onboarding useful data to the Filecoin network. Love to open it up to any questions and discussions that the group might have.
Galen, Deep, that was an incredible introduction to Filecoin Plus. We had a couple questions, but you already answered all of them in the last slide, because you went into every single subsection of how this appeals to different parties. Maybe I'll just kind of rephrase some of the questions so we can go maybe deeper into it. But I think maybe just understanding how you're prioritizing which group to kind of get involved more. You obviously talked about the dev tool side, the notary side, the sealer side. So is there like a particular group that is more important right now, and how are you thinking about bringing people in?
Deep?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, my reaction to that is basically no. I think that all of these stakeholders are really, really important and individually play a role that supports each other effectively. Like, it's very hard to just have extremely efficient notaries and then not have clients that want to leverage those notaries to use the network. And if you have a lot of clients and you don't have the supply side of the marketplace through storage providers that are interested in taking those deals, then it's also not particularly useful. I think one thing that the network has going for it right now is a very strong set of storage providers that are willing and able to serve the needs of clients on the network. And so we sort of view Filecoin Plus as right now as an enabling function for those clients to say, hey, like, how do I prove that I'm like a productive member of this ecosystem, and then how do I convince a storage provider to effectively pick me or work with me to ensure that I get like high quality storage over a period of time. And so effectively, we'd love to engage people that are notaries that want to be notaries, or people that are clients and want to be clients, or are also just on like the supply side of the marketplace as storage providers. But also in general, like the Filecoin Plus program is relatively young. Like we think about things on the 5-10 year minimum like horizon with these things. And as a network, Filecoin's only been around for a year. Filecoin Plus was instituted as a FIP at that stage as well. And so I think we've got a lot of learning to do and a lot of improvement in our processes. And so even the bare minimum, hey, like show up to our calls, check out the GitHub repo, like talk to us, give us your feedback, engage on Slack, GitHub, etc. It's still useful. Like minutes of time from somebody who has a helpful perspective at this stage still adds a lot of value. And so I would almost say like reduce what you think the standard is for you to like participate and engage in the system and be productive and help this sort of flywheel effect of ensuring that like the network is productive and come engage in whatever the natural fit is, because I think we'd love to have you.
So there's also an advantage is we have lots of things that can be worked on in parallel. And so, someone coming to this particular program with ideas or tooling, for example, that they wanted to help build, are not in any way going to slow down or be at the cost of us, engaging with them and helping get that project going, while also prioritizing, onboarding more of those large data sets, or, working to unblock the notary due diligence process. And so one of the things that's just really exciting is, as Deep said, if somebody comes in and they have a new perspective or a new idea and a little bit of bandwidth, that can really quickly, like rapidly turn into a lot of an exciting opportunity and potential, because we can then maybe connect them with other community members that are thinking the same way or that are kind of pulling that same direction. And so the nice thing about a very broad open source community governance model is, we don't have as many kind of individual hierarchical blockers where, changes or projects or programs need to really kind of fit into some kind of roadmap or particular process scale. And so it allows us to really work on lots of exciting things in parallel.
No, I think this is really well said. And I think I'll summarize this by saying, if anybody's interested in getting involved, showing up is the first step. And it's early enough that you can figure out how you can best participate in that ecosystem. So with that, I want to thank both of you for talking about Filecoin Plus and for that amazing talk. And we'll wrap the day with a quick message to all of our hackers that submissions are due this Sunday, and can't wait to see what everybody builds. So happy hacking, everybody. And if you are stuck, or if you have any last minute things that you need help on, be sure to ping the mentors channel on Discord, and we want to make sure that you're ready for this Sunday. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching all the summits and engaging with us on the chat.